Knightfight and other Dark Knight puns. Knightfight is a DC K.O. tie-in miniseries that sees Batman Bruce Wayne having to fight his adult sons as Batmen. And what can I say? I was intrigued. I'm part of the problem. I checked out issue 1 and now we shall talk about it. And of course, spoilers, because we're close to time release. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and I hope you like Batman because we're about to see a lot of him. Knightfight, with the knight spelled in its medieval iteration, is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Dan Mora and colors by Triona Farrell. This does directly tie into events from the main DC K.O. series. DC K.O. is a 2025 event where the heroes and some of the villains are in a tournament arc to see who is worthy to wield the Heart of Apocalypse and become King Omega, and then take on Darkseid. Now, alongside the tie-ins in the main ongoing series, this is a side quest for Batman, a little Batman mini, because he died in the main event. He was stabbed through the chest by the Joker, in a move that some felt was a relief, because the event wouldn't be Bat-centric, to something some questioned, because Batman was in his Justice Buster armor, so how could it penetrate through all that? Some felt it seemed like the scales were wonky, power-wise, mileage varied. Well, this endeavors to explain that. Now, because Batman is Batman, he's gonna get this little series. But in terms of the narrative context, what's going on? Now, while this 4-issue mini does tie directly into KO, you could conceivably pick it up without reading that, if you're just interested in this little event, this sojourn into Batman fighting adult Batmen. At least that's how it seems as of issue 1, which is an issue that is largely musing on Bruce's relationship to Batman and the legacy of his sons, as well as meditations on what the potential future for Batman could look like and what would the ideal future be. This work is more emotional than some may expect based on the pitch. While there is some let them fight energy, there is also a lot of things to ponder if one so chooses. The comic opens on musing. Bruce is thinking about how he's getting old. He's not as fast as he used to be. He can't get places in time, and he's really rushing because the person he's set to confront is Professor Pig, who's kidnapped a bunch of kids, so stakes. Professor Pig is just disturbing in general. You don't want anybody kidnapped by him. When he gets to the scene, though, he gets a pleasant, not surprise, but reassurance in that his sons are there. Now, when it comes to that header in this series, they're including 4. We're talking about Dick, Jason, Tim, and Damian. While some might be thrilled to see them counted as equals, and them not elevating Damian because of his biological status, which can sometimes happen, some may wish that more were included. Some may wish to see some of the female characters, his daughters. Some may want more sons. I can hear some people in the back. People debate who should be included in the Bat family roster under the Bruce's children mantle. So that is always something that's up for discussion. As for this, we have 4 issues. We're focusing on 4 of them, and those tend to be the 4 characters people do think of just casually when people think of Batman's sons. If one likes Bat Dad vibes in general, then this story has a lot of that, as Bruce starts to think about his family and what they mean to him, and what it means for him as Batman.
There was a time when I was alone in Gotham, but that was a lifetime ago. Now my family patrols the streets with me. Watching them work, it's impossible not to see myself in each of them.
Now, this next section is always one that can be interesting to see, and it can be something that fans will debate, and it's that Batman then presents a kind of definition of each of the sons and where they fit and what their role is. This can be a fun fandom discussion. It can also sometimes get fraught.
The leader. For a while, I thought Dick would replace me, but he's built a role and life of his own. Leads countless heroes into bigger battles than I ever thought possible when I started. The rebel, the survivor. I worry about Jason's penchant for violence, but sometimes I envy him. He embraced his anger in a way I never could.
The brains, the detective. Tim is always thinking, always planning.
The heart. Damian started as a killer, but has grown to be a healer.
It must also be known that this is coming from Batman's perspective, so that's something to keep in mind. I would love to hear your thoughts on these characterizations, whether you feel they're broad strokes accurate, whether you feel like they work for Bruce. I can see some agreeing, I can see some fierce debates. It is nice to see a bit of a moving forward and not being pushed back Jason, although there are some who feel that he should never have left that kind of tragic quasi-villain role that he had adopted when he was first resurrected. That's the thing about this story. These characters have played out some of these sequences before, so for some they may be entering into compare and contrast territory, which for some could be interesting, or for others may feel like a retread.
Some nights I watch them and wonder, if they're here, does Gotham still need me?
Now, with the emotional kind of beat set up, after the title page, the story jumps to Batman's death, and we get to see the scene from DC K.O. #1 redrawn by Dan Mora, and it can be fun to go and compare, just to see how different artists render different scenes, just because it's always interesting to see what they choose to emphasize and what they don't. Now, in this tournament, when people fall, they get a statue. Captain Marvel, legal name Shazam, has one in his adult form, which is amusing because he was killed in his child form, but I guess a little Billy Batson statue, that might have been a tad morbid. R.I.P. Ambush Bug, you got to have a line. We see Batman burst free of his casing, because he, of course, had a contingency plan. He had a boom tube placed inside of his armor, and it was set to go off if he was inactive for too long. They don't give a specific time limit, they just say too long, because when you give a specific time limit, people can question, even though they'll question anyway. There's no stopping the questioning. Now, in behind-the-scenes discussions, such as at New York Comic Con, this was explained as cheating, which is why Batman has ended up in a kind of special scenario. But is it cheating if it wasn't explicitly in the rules that he couldn't do this? I'd like to see the rules. Now, the Gotham that Batman returns to is not quite right, and he's quickly confronted by a bunch of unknown Robins. The ginger one is wielding two gun-looking weapons. I like to think that this is a nod to original Ginger Jason. They have some nice outfits. The almost all black one is my favorite. I'd like to see it again. Let me know what you like, or if you like any of them, or just no to all. None of the above. I'm calling it in. This is Robin 52. We have an illegal Batman sighting. We need backup. A nod to DC's obsession with the number 52. As this goes on, we see even more and more Robins, but those first four are the most lovingly rendered. And Bruce knows that they're trying to lead him somewhere, and he lets it happen because he wants to know what's going on. And they lead him to the first Batman that he must face, the Dick Grayson version of Batman. I warned you, Bruce. If you returned, it would be war. Now, these costume designs by Mora for the adult Batman were shared beforehand, but now inside the issue, we're going to see them in action. Dick's is very similar to the regular Batman outfit, but there's a bit more of a blue accent, and then you see his weapons, they're on the side. Now, it must be known that Dick has been Batman before, more than once, and a couple of times for decent lengths of time, outside of the just filling in here and there, and also outside of imaginary tales, like in Alfred's fanfiction. You had this happen post the Nightfall era, because during Nightfall, we had the whole Azrael Batman situation, but he does become Batman in Batman Prodigal in 1994. While Bruce is sorting himself out. He's also been Batman post Bruce's death after Final Crisis in 2009. And then there was the battle for the cowl and Dick was victorious. He remained Batman with Damian as his Robin for a couple of years until Batman The Return of Bruce Wayne, this in 2010. And then they kicked off the whole Batman Inc. era where they were going to expand Batman globally. And then the New 52 happened in 2011 and rebooted the entire line. The point is that there is a history of Dick as Batman. And so you've already seen different versions of how he handles and views that. The push and pull of it, especially after creating his own identity as Nightwing. So here we're going to get to see another potential look at it. Although, as mentioned, it is seemingly possibly filtered through Bruce's perception. We'll see. Time recording. It's issue 1. Now, Dick has no idea what Bruce is talking about with the whole Dark Side tournament thing, and instead he tells him a different story about how Bruce couldn't stop being Batman. He couldn't let it go, and so he immersed himself in the Lazarus Pit and went insane. I cannot hear any talk of Bruce immersing himself in the Lazarus Pit without thinking about that episode from Batman Beyond, the one where Talia comes and tempts him with the offer to be young again, including with some seduction, but then it turns out it's not Talia, it's Raish in her body.
But I suppose what is done is done.
Detective.
Never forget. Do you hear yourself right now? The Lazarus Pit drove you crazy, just like it did Raish, Talia, Jason, and Selina. The direction that this story takes Dick's version of Batman is playing on Dick's role being able to cooperate with others, taking that kind of leadership aspect and magnifying it. Now, while oftentimes the Titans or the Teen Titans can be a drama-laden mess, the pervasive feeling around the team is one of family and teamwork, and that's what's being played to here. Dick took the Titans model and scaled it way up with a bat tower, and he's taken the Robin role and franchised it out a la Batman Inc. We have Robin Inc. We have a whole We Are Robin thing going on. Anybody can be Robin. It takes the idea of Robin is meant to overcome trauma, which they actually flat out state. And that's how they take the portrayal here, which is how it can be taken in its more generous depictions. In the less charitable ones, it's more often portrayed as child soldiering. Maybe we'll get to see some of that contrast when we see Jason. Who knows? As mentioned, this one has a bit more of a positive outlook, which is fitting for Dick. It's exploring the idea that Batman Bruce Wayne needs to share the load, that there is strength in that cooperation. We created a support system that grew outside of Gotham in a way you never could. Now Robin Inc. has Robins in every major city in the world, run by Babs, Cass, Duke, Steph. Our numbers grow every day. The world is far from safe, but your mission continues. Now what the Robin name means to Dick, how personal it is for him, that can vacillate a little bit. It's changed over time. Sometimes it's incredibly personal, a nickname given to him, and it's something that he's not okay sharing, and other times he's more willing to pass it around, or it's something that he comes to be willing to share. In terms of this story, it lends itself to this depiction of Dick Grayson as the delegating mentor figure. The idea of shared legacy is a strength, not dilution. And that's not subtle at all. They flat out talk about legacy. This is why I kept saying to you could stop, you could retire. Let your legacy continue with me. Now, Dick has had those side streaks before in the Batman Beyond universe, but he also had an eye out there, and so he looked like Nick Fury. Here he looks like this. Let the Silver Fox Dick Grayson fan art commence. Bruce is not entirely buying this. Like, it's close, but slightly off.
This is not you. I didn't want you to continue the burden. I wanted you to have your own life. You created your own identity, and I want you to keep that.
That's a lie. You didn't want us to take the burden from you because you refused to give up being Batman, because you know that without it, you're nothing. And it's from this point that we get the let them fight aspect. It comes pretty late into the issue. There's actually very little fighting in this. It's much more establishing the environment and the slightly uncanny nature of the world, where one can see it arising in some ways that it's a little off. It's intentional that it doesn't feel entirely right. Now, this lack of it being a straight up all fight issue is likely a strength. Bruce and Dick squaring off against each other is not a new thing. And while it can be quite impactful, the more introspective examination of Bruce and Dick and their relationship to each other and to being Batman, it can provide something a tad more interesting, in my opinion anyway. Perhaps some people just really wanted to see them, I was gonna say go at it when I was first scripting it, and then I remembered that there are some people who are shipping it because that can mean something very different, so I'm gonna say face off. He's gonna take his face off. I'm a better Batman than you because I trust people. I don't lead with fear. Now, as he's fighting, Bruce hears the ping, and that kind of confirms what he was already thinking, that this is somehow still tied to the Darkseid tournament, that in some way he's still being made to fight. Although, this being an alternate world was something worth considering, that does happen. But there are just some leading phrases in the way that Dick is talking to him that makes it seem like it's more about him. It can lead one down the path that was hinted at in the opening, when Bruce talked about how he can't help but see some aspects of himself in each of his sons. Is he fighting Dick or a part of himself? However, he realizes that he must fight, they must fight, even if he is also starting to question some of the things that Dick is saying. Should he quit? Would it be better to just pass it on to someone seemingly more able to delegate and inspire? Now, the story does have a dramatic reveal hook on the last page, and it does more firmly seem to cement this as no, not a viable alternate future, but who knows, years down the line, we can just reclassify it, like they did with all those imaginary stories after Crisis on Infinite Earths. In all fairness, this issue does not have a lot of time to explore the idea of this not just being something tied to the tournament. There's only 4 issues. However, the ending does open up some potential questions of fears Bruce has about the position he puts his children in. We'll see if it goes into that when we encounter Jason, because we all know that Bruce has tons of guilt about Jason, and that was how Jason was used for a long time before he came back. Jason used to be considered one of the permadeaths. I go back and forth between wishing he was dead or not, even though I like the character. Does anybody else do that? One thing is for certain, dead or alive, DC loves to mine that drama of Jason and Bruce, and that was issue 1 of Batman Knightfight. As mentioned, it is possible to engage with this outside of DC K.O. if one is just intrigued by the concept. Reading DC K.O. will just give one more of a background context, but it won't enhance this issue by itself too much. At least not so far. We'll see how they continue to intertwine as it goes on. Now, this issue is working through the ideas of Batman as a father/mentor figure, and what legacy can mean in a role that he can't leave, either because he thinks or feels that he can't, or because of some of the metatextual kind of elements that are being touched upon, which do enhance and make the story more interesting if one entertains them. This idea that Batman as Bruce is something that seemingly must be, while there are others who are arguing for change and for things to move forward, and yet there are still those who enjoy the forever tale and the legend and want those in the original roles to remain there. And then of course, when we're talking about outside factors, there's a monetary aspect. I mean, as mentioned, I'm part of the problem. Another element being explored is just how should Batman operate? All of that leads nicely into one of the strengths of this issue, and the way that it can be fun on a couple of levels. However, that can only happen if one wants to/deigns to engage with it in that way. On the one hand, there's the more surface Batman has to fight some versions of the tournament even though he's not actually there. There's like a little bit of a comeuppance kind of thing to it, and also maybe a psychological element, which leads into the more layered way to look at that. The examination of Bruce's role, his relationship with his children, and how he views how they view their relationship with the mantle. Because we'll see if this is actually how they look at it or how he thinks they look at it, and either would be interesting. These can be intriguing questions for some readers. This issue moves swiftly and states its intent at several points. For those who enjoy kind of pondering the hypotheticals of what Batman means and who should be Batman, and should the legacy be allowed to continue, or is it more fun to kind of have it keep going in this way? If one likes thinking about these hypotheticals, this issue can be a lot of fun. And there's the hook of, I wonder what the next issue will be like. What other angles will it bring into it? And then also new costumes and let them fight. In terms of stakes, there's never a true question of, is Batman actually somewhere else? The tournament never fully fades away. I mean, it makes sense. It is a tie-in. Now, the story does try to present a plausible reason why Bruce would be confused by introducing potential Lazarus Pit corruption, but it doesn't have the time to commit to a shocking, is everything what it seems kind of reveal. There are other reveals that needs to build to, and potentially different questions that it's going to work through. Now, another factor is if one just wanted to see them fight, then they could be disappointed if they wanted more action. Overall, I found this issue fun. I am a person who enjoys ruminating on Bruce's relationship relationship with being Batman and his kid's relationship with that and his relationship with his kids. I guess I'm the mark for Bat Dad stuff. Now, if one isn't into that, I can see this being less appealing, or if one feels that these questions have already been explored or explored more adequately other places, or they want it to get real deep when it does that, then I can see this potentially not grabbing some. Different strokes for different folks. I want to talk about it because after I posted that panel of old Dick, and yes, I said what I said, people had a lot to say. What are your thoughts on Knightfight? Let me know down below. What do you feel about this version of Dick as Batman? Either the thought process, Bruce's potential thought process on it, the costume, just tell me things. Please share your thoughts down below. While you're down there, please all the YouTube things like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid, hit the hype button, all of the YouTube things. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.